Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Kurian Tharakan.
Tharakan.
There
you go.
Tharakan. Do you know people don't even know how to pronounce my name?
Joanne Victoria?
Yeah. Believe it or not. I know. It's like, please, it's the Queen. Can't you remember that? And then they say, which Queen? So Kurian is the founder of the sales and marketing strategy firm, Strategy Peak Sales and Marketing Advisors, and a 27-year veteran of the sales and marketing industry. Mr. Tharakan is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, The 7 Essential Stories Charismatic Leaders Tell. And it sounds very interesting, so you should buy it on Amazon. This book details how anyone can move people and mountains with the power of story. Story is great, and that's what I want to hear from you right now, Kurian. The story. I mean, did you wake up one day as a 12-year-old and just decide that you were going to go into sales and marketing, or was that a path that was laid out for you?
You know, I regularly go back and give little commencement addresses and things like that to graduating classes at the School of Business, which I graduated from years ago. And one of the clearest things I tell them is that life is not a straight path, and everyone's looking for that perfect first move, right? And get them going on that fast ascent path. But most people, the vast majority of people, when they look back on it, if they're doing anything that they love, and also if they don't love it, it's a zigzag path, and at the core of it, especially if it's something that you love, you end up doing something. The only thing that allows it to form together to where you are at today, if you love it, is the intent that you had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years old ago when you started it. When I was very young, when I was 10 or 11, one of my teachers actually said to me, Kurian, you're a great salesman. You just have natural skills in sales. And he was watching me in some kind of, student auction we were doing or something like that in class. And I didn't even know what that meant at that time. And, as I was going through high school and things like that, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And, that quickly, I realized I did not have the skills or the temperament for that. And then I thought I was going to go into computers, and there's all sorts of things. But all the way along, and one of the things I always wanted to do was work with entrepreneurs in a management consulting perspective. And I didn't know what that meant either. I didn't know what that meant in the way of skills or anything like that. And that's something I wanted to do in university. 30 years later, I'm doing exactly that, and what I didn't realize at the age of 22 is that you need something to trade, to that entrepreneur. And hopefully it's experience and some skills and some knowledge. You need to go out and get that. You just don't automatically show up as a management consultant. And so over the next 20, 25 years, I had built a lot of different experiences. Everything. I spent 12 years in the mergers and acquisitions business, buying companies, selling companies, raising capital. I spent time in VP roles at various companies doing sales and running their sales and marketing teams. I did a lot of things that informed my current knowledge so that I can actually provide value to people that I speak to. So it's a very circuitous path, people. And I'm talking, of course, to those 21-year-old, 22-year-old, third and fourth year students, right? You just don't pop up somewhere. You have to just zig and zag, but keep your intent.
Yeah, that's it. It always amazes me that people in their 20s are coming out and saying, I can help you do this. You haven't experienced life yet. So how you think you can help me do that is just too much ego involved.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We pick up the experience, as you say. You picked up the experience over 20 years of learning and being and doing and being in charge of people and helping them be successful. And that's really what people look at. When they want to hire you, they look at your experience. What do you know? Where did you know that? How good are you? All of these things connect and make this cake, this stew.
It's holistic. It's holistic.
Totally.
You have, knowledge, you have experience, you have character. And those are three primary axes that you deliver value through. One of the things that these students are always surprised to hear me say is that one of the top reasons people hired me out of university was I showed up on time.
Oh, isn't that the one? That is one of my 4 values.
I show up. Show up on time. Show up on time, and that is almost pathological with me. Like if I'm not on time for something, call 911 because something's happened.
Right. I'm the early person. I'm always a few minutes early, depending. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, but I'm on the military schedule.
Exactly. And Joanne, and all I do with that is that I'm trying to illustrate that knowledge is something I expect you to come out of university with. Skills are something that I expect you to come out of school with, and those kind of things. So that puts you on par with everybody else that's graduating, and the probability that you are going to be an order of magnitude better than somebody else I'm going to interview for that job is very low. But what is very clearly different are character traits like punctuality, like meticulousness, like perseverance, grit, those kinds of things. And that is something that they don't teach you in school. That is something that you arrive with, and you can develop it as well. But that is something innate, and that is what amplifies knowledge and skills.
Yeah, that comes from mom and dad.
That definitely the way you were raised. And sometimes it's the opposite of mom and dad too, right?
But either way, yeah, it's true. But either way, you do get something from that part of your life that you have to bring forward. If you were always late and maybe you've realized that doesn't work anymore, so you go forward and you're on time, but still you have to come with some innate characteristics, and character is where it's at, and character comes from experience. It just, you're just not born with character. You either trust people or you don't.
Yeah, that is something so deeply innate, and these kids are programmed to believe that they ace their finals and get that 4.0 average and things like that they are automatically going to be able to add value. It's just not true. It just isn't true. That's the bare minimum, and sometimes, not that I've hired kids right out of high school, and they've done really well in my digital marketing firm. I just promoted a young man, 25 years old, to be our director of sales. And he just gets it. This guy is, it's all character traits, though.
Correct.
It's all character. And he grabs the bull by the horns. We give him the resources he needs, and he's building the systems for us because that's how he's built. That's how he's built. And whether that he got that from his parents or whether he got that himself, it doesn't really matter. I often say this is a 45-year-old man in a 25-year-old's body. And somehow we're lucky enough to have him. And it's because of the character traits that he has, not anything to do with his knowledge and skills.
And that's why age is irrelevant.
Age is wholesale irrelevant. What's the old line? You're only young once, but you can stay immature indefinitely.
Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one. I don't hang around immature people by choice.
Well, I think it was some wife complaining about her husband, something like that.
Oh, well, that's another podcast. It's not. Okay, so what is the number one reason people, companies, organizations, and movements fail?
Well, this is coming from a book I wrote a couple of years ago called The 7 Essential Stories Charismatic Leaders Tell. And the book was a result of my experiences working with startup companies and established businesses to scale their organizations, right? To get them from 0 to their first 100,000 or get them from 1 million to 5. And it struck me that a lot of these companies, especially the startups, were run by engineers and scientists and PhDs of various kinds. A lot of them were out of the university that I worked with. And the last thing that they were trained to do was to sell. They didn't go to school to learn to sell. That's not what they took in their PhD programs. Yet they were forced into a position now where they had to sell their ideas and their products to investors, let alone marketplaces and customers, right? So we needed to come up with a program that would allow them to adopt sales skills, but not in a salesy way, because it was kind of icky to them to be thought of as salespeople, and yet they have to do it. So we came up with this idea, and it was installed in that 7 essential stories. And the bottom line is this: the very first thing anybody sells, absolutely the very first thing anybody sells, is the big idea. And then from the big idea comes a series of core messages. And from those core messages comes embed into a strategic narrative with their customer as hero. So the very first thing you sell is the story. Big idea, core messages, strategic narrative, and that's the very first thing you sell. And here's the fascinating part about it. No one buys that for cash. No one buys that for cash, but they have to buy it mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically before they can make the decision to transact cash for the actual product that embodies the transformative promise that is contained in the story. That's the whole thing. The whole story is about how I'm going to transform you from where you are today to where you want to go.
So that is the first fit when people buy your big idea.
They have to buy the big idea. And the big idea has to be embedded within a narrative, because that's what gives it context and meaning. The big idea by itself, it can also be called a value proposition. But the narratives are what give it meaning.
Yes,
and allows it to be memorable.
Absolutely. So give me an example. Somebody's listening. They're in high school. They're graduating this June.
Okay.
Hopefully. They've got big thoughts, big ideas. They want something more than, becoming a carpenter. So What do they do?
And what's their objective? Is their objective to get a job? Is their objective to start a company? What's their objective?
Their objective is to start a company.
Start a company. Okay. So in order to start a company's only purpose is to deliver value to all of its constituents, including its customers, its investors, its employees, its shareholders, right? There's multiple constituents. But the very first place it's got to deliver value to is the person that transacts cash, because without cash, you are not going to be in business very long. So what's that value delivered to the customer? Now, I'm going to take something that's very relevant today as far as newsworthiness goes, and we can talk about cryptocurrency. And so this 17-year-old, and by the way, I know 18-year-old right now, maybe he's 19 at this point, who's made a lot of money in cryptocurrency, and is doing just fine with that kind of stuff. Now, here's a big idea: the coming cryptocurrency crash.
Yep.
And how to profit from it. ... and how to profit from it. Now, that big idea can capture attention. Now I have to back it up with a story, the narrative, the strategic narrative that tells me more about the details and the context of how this works and how I can engage this young person to help me profit from the upcoming cryptocurrency crash.
Okay, so my mind is going, so the kid's got it. He's ready. He's going to step his foot in there and he's looking for the story.
Right.
So how does he, what is the process? Does he read newspapers, go online, read stories, call you?
I'll tell you the only difference between an entrepreneur that does this by themselves, and an entrepreneur that calls me. I have a very defined process for teasing it out of them, because everybody knows their story. Everybody knows their story. I was sitting with a friend of mine and a couple of years ago. And we were talking about the book I just wrote, right? And I gave her a copy of the book. And she said to me, I can't write a book. I could never do that. And I say to her, everybody has a book in them.
At least one.
Maybe multiple, right?
Yep.
Everybody has a book in them. It may not be a 1 million copy bestseller, but you have a book in you. You want to know why you have a book in you? Because in order to have a meaningful life, you have to have insights and values, and these will all translate into purpose that creates meaning. right? In order to have a meaningful life, you have to have these kinds of things. So people already have these insights. Now, it doesn't really matter what those perspectives are. You could be a QAnon fanatic. You have purpose and meaning.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You could
absolutely.
be an absolute Hillary Rodham Clinton fan. Okay, absolutely. But there's purpose and meaning there. And so it doesn't matter what those perspectives are. And those are quite different perspectives.
No kidding.
Within it, you have several insights that you have bought into. Now, the only way people can make meaning of their lives is through the stories they tell themselves.
Yeah. There's no other way.
There is no other way.
Otherwise, they're in a vacuum all by themselves.
Yeah, and in fact, it goes further than that. The only way to understand anybody else is to understand the stories they tell themselves. So you have these strategic narratives, you have, insights, you have all these things that give that individual meaning. And once you understand the meaning that that individual has, you are one or two steps closer to understanding them. Because without meaning, it doesn't mean anything. Without meaning, it doesn't
I know.
mean
That's okay. We'll stay with that one.
So let me
go for it.
Keep going. Okay. So here's a very common example I like to use for my American fans, and that is that down in the U.S., you have deep polarity in the political system right now, and you have two major parties. There may be some fringe parties as well, but you have the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, with the Republicans and Democrats, it doesn't matter what the facts are. Whatever the facts are in the middle, the stories that the Democrats will tell are going to be different than the stories that the Republicans will tell. The right will tell a different story than the left will, and the conservatives will tell a different story than the progressives will. And it's through the stories, through the same set of facts, that result in the different meanings that creates the polarity. That's what happens. And one of the things that, people and negotiators will do, for example, mediators will do, is when you have people that are so different, they might actually line them up back to back. And one person has to actually listen to the other person tell their story about whatever they're talking about, what the insights and meanings are. And they can't move on until they are able to, the opposing side is able to relate that story as well, if not better, than the person they just heard it from.
Got it.
That means that they've understood that position now.
Got it. Right.
And that's the only way we can actually see commonality, common ground, in these, different positions. Here's an example I can give to you. I saw this on YouTube recently. It was about an environmentalist, but she is a conservative environmentalist. And she will say that, the Republicans way back, in the 70s and 80s, the EPA was a creation of Richard Nixon. And so it's very much an environmental type of, conservation mentality way back when, but it's gone past that now. And so here's an example. If you tell the average conservative, it's all about, like solar power. And the reaction might be, solar power, it doesn't work. It requires perfect conditions. Wind power, it doesn't work, requires perfect conditions. We got to stick with oil and gas. Now, if you change the narrative simply from talking about solar or wind power and talk about energy independence, you get a completely different attention span on the other side.
Yeah, you have a different picture in your mind immediately.
Right. It's a completely different picture because what we're doing now is, even though it's the same topic, we're actually talking, we're relating to a different value set. And energy independence is very much a conservative value set. They absolutely get that side. Solar or wind by itself, that sounds like a lot of green movement type of thing. But energy independence, wow, yeah, you're right. We got to bring that home. And you get a completely different hearing.
So you're talking about, as you say, the story is the wheel that you put on the vehicle to make it move forward. The
story is the medium to deliver the message. And so if we go back to this idea, it's a big idea. The core message is embedded in a strategic narrative with your customer as hero. And It's a transformation story. And so the only way we understand our world is through the stories we tell ourselves. So the story becomes the medium to embed the messages and the big idea.
So the people who are listening to this podcast right now, and I tell people this every podcast, once this podcast is over, re-listen to the podcast with a pen and paper, because information goes from your brain to the pen to the paper and stays in your body. It stays in the neurons that you've created. And see and hear what Kurian is saying to you and retell your story with his data behind you, because the information that you're receiving now is going to change your life. You may not know this right now, but it will. Once you listen and rewrite and listen and rewrite, you will be amazed. Obviously, it's a possible book, but that's not the point. The point is to get your mindset into the storytelling process so that you're finding your own big idea with your own stories and how you differ from what you've heard. Because then it becomes a conversation, and a conversation becomes a story.
And then we have understanding, mutual understanding. When I understand your story, I am a step closer to understanding you. And
that's pretty much it for everything. Understanding. You don't need to accept, just need to understand. And you can do this if you have conversations. This is making my mind go in different places just by listening. And I've got parallel universes going on in my brain, left side, right side, total brain. Well, it is because it's one of the reasons I host podcasts, because I invite great guests. I'm lucky, I'm blessed. And then these guests, including you, come up with possibilities and opportunities for my mind to shift a little bit, because I'm in the business of removing old patterns from other people's lives. And along with that, I remove them from myself. So if you remove a pattern, however it goes organically, you have space to see more. The light comes in. We've been around so long that it gets dark. So if we can create some light, as Kurian is doing today, pay attention. Re-listen to the podcast, share it with your close friends so you can discuss this again and come to more understanding. And this is your team, which is one of your friends that understand you and or become part of your team. This is like the first step to huge success, is creating a team. I'm sure Kurian has some sort of a team, right?
We do. And in fact, we run that team on values and principles embedded in story. So what I talk about with you on this podcast right now, Joanne, I practice in real life in my digital marketing agency. And, and we've actually shortened up the stories to just little metaphors. And when we say Coca-Cola, it means one thing. When we say, it's just different words and different meanings. Another one is FedEx, and it means a whole different other story. Again, we don't have to repeat the stories anymore, because the metaphors are now so deeply embedded. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola means, and everybody knows what FedEx means.
Yes, we have the pictures in our mind already from life.
From life, right? But but very specifically, this is a specific FedEx story and a specific Coca-Cola story. But because we've told it so many times, it is now part of the metaphors that evoke values in the business.
There you go. Okay, so you have 7 essential stories Charismatic Leaders Tell, available on Amazon. And please, 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 everybody, go to his website at strategypeak.com. Is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners before we say goodbye for the day?
And only this, Joanne, for the first 5 of your listeners that tell me that they heard me talk about the book on your show, I'm going to send them a free Kindle copy of the book.
Okay, you can't get any better than free. And this book is something that I'm going to get myself, because I like Kurian's methodology, and I need to embed it in my left brain. And so 7 essential stories Charismatic Leaders Tell. And as Kurian discussed with me prior to the show, he brings in historical characters. So we're not just talking about his Uncle Joe or my Aunt Mabel or somebody down the block that opened up a gas station. He's talking about history, and history does tend to repeat itself, and you might as well hear it from the origins.
Yeah, right from the origins. And just a quick little interjection.
Absolutely.
My absolute favorite story, the world's oldest written customer complaint letter, 3,500 years ago on a clay tablet.
Wow.
Amazing stuff. And if you read it, it would sound just like something you would send off to the Amazon customer complaint department right now by email. But this guy was writing it on a clay tablet 3,500 years ago.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah, knowledge is power. Everybody knows that. And where you get your knowledge from incorporates a variety of ways. One, we have this podcast now. And two, we have this book that Kurian has written. And you incorporate what you've written, what you've heard into your own story and see what better story comes out. Because that's the way it is. That's the way it happens. I want to thank Kurian Tharakan. God, I apologize for my dumbness.
No problem.
Well, it is. It's not that I'm rude. I'm just careless right now, apparently. And I will admit to that. Tharakan. There it is. I got it. Tharakan. Is that it? Tharakan? Kurian Tharakan.
Perfect.
Okay. So Tharakan is also available on LinkedIn, Twitter. If you want to email him right now, it's Kurian, Kurian, at strategypeak.com, and a few other things that are on the website you're reading where his episode is, and this episode is going to millions of places. All right, Tharakan, thank you so much. I'm going to edit this last part out. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Thank you, Kurian, for being here today.
Joanne, thanks for having me on your show.
Take care. Have a wonderful time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.